Hey everyone, welcome to the Fancy Footy Floodbath and our video talking about 2023. How is your club going to go? Are they going to be okay? Are they going to go up the ladder? Are they going to get down the ladder? Are they going to stay the same, be as good? Let's do a bit of an analysis and we'll go through all of these teams in alphabetical order. Now, first I want to preface it by saying that I'm not going to give ladder positions because that can be fraught with danger and throw your predictions out the window, but I'll give you a general idea about what to expect for your team in 2023. So we'll start with Crows. Now, the first thing I want to say about Adelaide is that Matthew Nicks is under an enormous amount of pressure. He spent 3 years out of the finals. The Crows have had 3 years out of the finals, and in terms of the history of the Crows, they don't usually tolerate a fourth. So just be aware of that, Crows fans. So early on in the year, they're going to be one of the teams, like a few others, who are going to be under an enormous amount of pressure. I am not sure that they're ready to push up yet. I would expect them to stay around the same mark, maybe around the 12 to 10 to 12 mark. Probably not quite good enough to make finals, but probably that next level down. I just think that their playing list at this stage is not developed enough, and don't be surprised if Matthew Nicks gets the boot at the end of the season. Moving on to Brisbane. Now, Brisbane have got no excuses in 2023. They have recruited Dunkley and Jack Gunston into their side. They've got good draft picks with Will Ashcroft, who's probably ready to go, Jasper Fletcher, and they've got all of the players now that they need to push up towards a premiership, and they should definitely be making at least a prelim, but definitely a grand final in 2023. So if you're a Lions supporter, expect big things from them in 2023. Now, there can be injuries and all sorts of things happen, go wrong. The Chris Fagan situation is not completely sorted out until that review is done. So we'll see what happens, but I don't think there's too many excuses for Brisbane next year. They've been thereabouts for 4 or 5 years. It might be their time next year. Carlton is another one who's their time to shine. They are going to come out swinging in 2023. Get ready for the Blues to hit the ground running from day one. I heard someone say the other day that they ran into Sam Walsh about a month after the season finished, and he was still seething about the fact that they didn't make the finals. And I would imagine that just about everybody at the club, not just the players, would be thinking the same thing. And all the supporters we know would be as well. So if you're a Blues fan, I would think that they would be pushing up not just to finals, but to top four in next year. They're primed. They've got a good list. They just haven't quite learnt how to win consistently and get that culture changed. But they've had their practice year in a way with Voss there at the helm, and next year could be the big one for Carlton. Collingwood, well, I think Collingwood are a bit the other way. They kind of outperformed what everyone expected in 2022. They made a preliminary final. They're not going to take anyone by surprise in 2023, the Pies. I would expect them to drop down the ladder a little bit. Most people would think that they're going to push on to a grand final, but they're not going to shock anyone. No one was ready for them in 2022. No one expected them to go as well as they did, but everybody's going to be ready for them in 2023. And you've got to remember too that they had nearly 10 games where they won by less than 9 points or something. So you're not going to be able to replicate that. And in different circumstances, at least half of those games might go the other way and other teams might win. They got found out in the finals with those close results with 2 close losses. So I don't expect Collingwood to continue that run. Yes, they've traded well. Yes, they've drafted well. But don't expect the same, Pie supporters. One thing I always say is that teams and players that have career best years, they find it very difficult to back up the following year. So expect a little drop from Collingwood, and then probably they will come back in 2024. The Bombers, new coach, Brad Scott there now. I would expect Essendon to bounce back seriously. A seriously underperforming year, 2022. They should be pushing up towards the 8, if not into the 8, the bottom half of the 8 in 2023, and expect a much better effort. They've got a good list. They've got an experienced list. They've got good talent on that list, and they should be able to bounce back and be quite dramatic improvers in 2023. Fremantle first. I'm hearing a lot of talk about, from maybe because I live in Perth, but a lot of people are excited about Fremantle, this, that, and the other. But I tend to think that they're not as ready as what a lot of people think they are. Yes, they've got in Jackson. Yes, they've got in O'Meara. But I'm not as excited about their list as what a lot of people are. I tend to think they overperformed in 2022. I don't think they're as good as what a lot of people say. I would think that Fremantle might be struggling to make the 8 in 2023. I know that's a big call, but if you look across their list, it's they've got some good players. They've got some good midfielders in Brayshaw, Sarong, but I felt like the Brayshaws and the Sarongs really held a lot of the load for them in 2022. And while they're going to get to spread that a little bit with O'Meara coming in, Jackson coming in, I still don't think that they're a top quality side just yet. So, my theory, I have a theory too, that if the Eagles or Fremantle are going to win a premiership, they need to be by far the best team in the first half of the year, because statistics and experience says that as the year goes on, the travel tends to take a big toll on those teams, because they're travelling every second week away from Perth on 4 or 5 hour flights there and back. And over the course of the season, that causes them to get a lot more tired and not do as well as the first half of the year. So if Fremantle are going to be a real contender, they probably need to be in the top 2 by the bye. By the time the bye comes around, they need to be in the top 3, 2 or 3 teams in the competition. And I think that that's going to be quite a challenge for them. Next one is Geelong, obviously the Premiers, the Cats. Well, you got to remember that they had success. A lot of their older players had success in 7, 9 and 11. But these older guys, the Hawkins, the Duncans, the Isaac Smiths, they've been really working their butt off to try and get that premiership in the back end of their career. Now that they've got it, I can't see them backing that up. I know that's a big call. Dangerfield's another one. And there are a few other older guys, as we know, at Geelong. I'm not sure that the motivation's going to be as strong in 2023. As much as they would want it to be, or as much as they would hope it would be, it's very hard to do back-to-back premierships. Very rarely do teams do it. And I think that Geelong might have, a bit like Melbourne the year before, once you reach a dream of something that you haven't done for a very long time, it's very hard to get to that mountain again straight after. So expect Geelong to be good. I expect them to finish maybe 5th or 6th or something, but I wouldn't think that they would be gunning for that premiership again in 2023. Gold Coast, well, it's time for the Gold Coast to deliver, isn't it? They've got to make the finals. It's time for them to get to where they need to be as a team and make finals for the first time. And I think if they don't get there, they'll be very close in 2023. GWS, they'll get a sugar hit from the new coach, Adam Kingsley. And, if you look down their list, they've got a lot of talented players and a lot of players with great ability who've got a lot of experience. Remember that only a few years ago they did play in a grand final, and a lot of those guys are still there. So I would expect them to bounce back. Whether they can make the 8, that's another thing, but we'll see. Hawthorn, I'm not as pessimistic about Hawthorn as a lot of people are. Yes, they've deeply cut their list. There's no doubt about that. They've really cut a lot of experience out of their list. But it was not long ago that we were starting to say that young teams are the ones that are going to start winning all the premierships. So even though they don't have the experience of maybe a Geelong or some other teams above them, don't expect Hawthorn to be bottom 2 or 3. I know that most people will have them in that spot because of the cutting they've done to their list, but I rate Sam Mitchell as a coach. What he did when he came to the Eagles as an assistant, I think he was there when they won the premiership in 2018. I think he's got the goods to be a very good coach, and I think some of those kids are going to come along a lot quicker than we expect. I would actually be expecting them to be in that same range as Adelaide, probably around the 10 or 11 mark, and they're going to cause a few surprises and a few headaches in 2023 for some teams. And don't be surprised if they actually do make the finals. I know that's a big call. Melbourne, well, speaking of teams that are going to come out breathing fire in 2023, Melbourne is one of those. They've won a premiership 2021. They've been beaten in straight sets in the finals in 2022. They are going to be gunning especially early. Let's remember that halfway through the 2022 season, they were 10 and zip. They hadn't lost a game, and they were unbackable odds to win the premiership. And don't be surprised if by the halfway mark again in 2023, they're looking very, very good. And if they get those double chances again in the finals, they could be hard to stop and could be right up there at the pointy end again. But they're certainly going to, if they get good chances in the finals and are able to re-establish that position, they're going to be determined not to fall out of the finals quickly like they did this season. That's just gone. Next, North Melbourne with the new coach, Alistair Clarkson. Obviously, that's still got to play out with all of the situation with him. But for me, I reckon North, they might only win 5 or 6 games in the year, but don't be surprised if they're against really good teams. I just think that North are going to show some real glimpses and consistent glimpses. They might, I would also expect that their percentage is going to increase by maybe 20 or 30%. They might end up only winning, as I said, 5 or 6 games, but they might end up with an 85, 90% in their percentage at the end of the season. They're going to greatly improve. I think we're going to see a lot of glimpses and may even avoid the wooden spoon, maybe like third last or fourth last. Next, Port Adelaide. Well, we're going to know really early with Port Adelaide. Even now, there is pressure on Ken Hinkley, and it's been talked about at the end of all 2022, and even through now, after the season, people are still talking about how much pressure Ken Hinkley is under, and that will continue into the start of the season. There's going to be an enormous amount of pressure on Port to perform. The one thing going for them is that they did really badly at the end of 2022 to not make finals, and they had a shocking year. So they're going to have probably a bounce back year. I would think that they would be pushing up, not just in finals, but towards top 4 again. I think there's a lot of talent in that list. They're a good group. They're going to want to atone for 2022. I think Ken Hinkley will be safe, but look out if they lose their first 4 or 5 games. He might be on the chopping block. Richmond, I found Richmond probably the hardest team to gauge. While they've had some good players like Edwards retire, and they got guys like Rewalt and Cochin who are going round again, who you wonder the wisdom of whether that's a good idea, but I guess we'll find out. And they've, on the other side of things, you kind of go, well, they've added Taranto and Hopper, and how much impact are those guys going to have immediately into their group? I would think the bottom half of the 8, if Richmond get there, maybe just outside, but I wouldn't think they'd be pushing up for a premiership. I think they took people by surprise 2022. I think a lot of people think that Richmond were kind of on the way down and on the way out. And I think while they lost a lot of close games, I think they've missed their chance to get back up the ladder, and I think it'll be a harder thing for them to do in 2023. The Saints with the new coach, Ross Lyon, well, it's boom or bust for them. It could be chocolates or bald lollies for St Kilda. I think, it might take 12 months for Ross Lyon will have, to me, from past experience watching him as a coach, he could have pretty a pretty complicated game style that he wants to implement with the Saints, and that might take a year for them to get the flow with that. I reckon it'll be completely different to what they've had with Ratton. So, but it is boom or bust with Ross Lyon. I think they could either be world beaters, especially the way they started 2022. The first half, they were great. I think they were 8-2 at the bye. But it could be the other way. They could be bottom four as well. So it's a real watch with the Saints. Another one I thought was difficult to kind of figure out, but keep an eye on them. The Swans, well, I'm a little bit loath to even mention the Swans because I'm a Swans supporter and I could be biased. The only thing I could kind of put onto it was that, once again, when players and teams have career best years like the Swans did, and a lot of their players in 2022 probably jumped to the grand final ahead of time, you would have to say that maybe they will have a drop-off year before they go up again. I would hope that they're able to reproduce a lot of that form in 2022, but once again, I don't think everyone's going to be gunning for them in 2023 because everyone wants to beat the premiers or the grand finalists, and they're not going to get away with anything. So they're going to have to step up their workload. They're going to have to be better, and some of them were excellent in 2022, so they're going to have to be better again in 2023, which will be difficult. So I would think mid-range of the top 8, maybe 4th or 5th, would be probably even a good result. If they could do that well and not drop right off, especially with the psychological damage that can happen after losing a grand final like that. History says when you lose a grand final by a huge amount, the next year you either don't play finals or the team is irrecoverably damaged and find it difficult to be as competitive and be as good. So the Swans are a big watch too for everyone. I'm trying to be as unbiased as possible. West Coast, well, wow. Once again, expect a fiery response. History says that West Coast, when they have a shocking year, they have a really good year the year after. There's certainly a lot of upside. Nearly every player on their list underperformed in 2022. So they're going to be very keen. And I've already heard that they are far advanced in their training of every other team in 2020 for 2023. So don't be surprised if they come out full of fire in the first 4 or 5, 6 rounds before, and they have the best match fitness. Might take a while for other teams to catch up. On the other side of the coin, I'm quite critical of their list and their recruiting and their trading over the last 3 or 4 years since they won the flag. I reckon it's been ordinary at best. And if you look down the list, I'm not sure that they've got the talent or they've got the ability in that group to be a real contender. But then, once again, you could say the same about Collingwood's list in 2022 and what it did. And I think motivation and that crowd in Perth, when they get going, really lift the group. So if they can get a bit of momentum, if they can win a few games early, then the sky's the limit for West Coast. And don't be surprised if it's an unbelievable turnaround compared to what they did in 2022. Last, the Western Bulldogs. Well, the Western Bulldogs are a difficult one, aren't they? Grand Final 2021, missed the finals 2022. I would expect they'd be around the mark of the 8 again. I wouldn't expect them to drop, but I wouldn't expect them to improve greatly either. I don't know if they've got the forward line to be able to... Yes, there's Norton there, but I don't think there's a lot of help for him. Their back line is also quite suspect. They've lost Lockie Hunter out of that group, who I think was more important than we knew. They have a star-studded midfield, but I'm not sure they've got the bookends to really contend. So expect them to be around the finals mark, but don't be surprised if they get edged out. The other thing I wanted to say about 2023 is that if you look down every list of every team, I reckon it says to me that this is going to be one of the most even seasons we've ever had. don't be surprised if 2023 you look down from 1st to 18th and there might be only 5 or 6 games difference. I reckon that there could come the last 2,000, the last 2 or 3 rounds of the season, there might be in the region of 7 or 8, 9 teams all vying for last 2 or 3 spots in the 8. I reckon we're going to see a lot of close games, a lot of games go down to the wire. Maybe dramatic ladder changes like I just alluded to. You know, you might see Hawthorn actually start to make leaps and bounds. You might see West Coast do the same. You might see a bounce back from Essendon, and we might have more changes in the 8 in 2022, in 2023 than we've ever had before. So just be ready for that, and it could be a great season. Might be one of the best seasons we've ever had, in my opinion. So just judging from the way teams are drafting these days, the way they're training these days, there's a real similarity. Games can come down to the wire and be just, you know, there could be a lot more of those games where you look back at the end of the season and go, well, my team only won 8 games and could have won another 10, which they lost by 3 goals or less or something, you know. So it's going to be one of those years where the last 5 minutes is going to be very, very important of every game, I think, and or most games. And I think that we could get 3 or 4 close finishes a week. So just be ready, be excited about 2023. I reckon it's going to be a great year. I'm already getting excited about it. It's only just gone December, but I think that to get ready for a great year. Hope that gets you excited about your team and about the competition in 2023. And keep watching. I hope you like and subscribe to our channel and the videos. And I'll talk to you again soon here on Fancy Footy Floodbath. Thanks, guys. Bye.